Wow, what a crazy last week. We had one of the worst weeks since 2020. Check this out. The Dow Jones Index, which is used to represent the top 30 blue chip stocks, was down 4.6%. The S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the US, an index that I'm actively buying every single day, was down 5.7%. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ was down 7.6%. Also, Bitcoin was down 20% to $35,000. And Ethereum down 25% to $2,400. Everything is crashing, and I found the perfect explanation. It's Titanic. Jerome Powell looks into the distance and he sees inflation. He quickly calls the Fed and he tells everyone to get below the deck and to stop the money printers. So everyone runs down, and faster and tighter they crank it, but it's just too late and we hit inflation right in the face. SPACs, of course, are the first to get destroyed because they're insanely overvalued. Small cap companies are just left to their own devices and no one wants to help them. Poor old people's 401ks and pension funds are just left drowning. Bond investors start scrambling, crypto investors get absolutely crushed, Wall Street bets investors are like, yeah, I knew this was gonna happen. Retail investors sell out, they paper hand, and while all of this is happening, CNBC is like, why are you panicking? Just buy our stock picks. Privileged politicians are like, what insider trading? And then the president, Joe Biden, wakes up and he's like, what's going on? So everything is crashing, everything's falling apart, and I'm gonna run out of money to buy the dip. But you know what they say about trying to time the market and buy the dip? Because this is the dip, and this is the actual dip, and this is the dip of the actual dip, and this is the dip of the dippity dip dip. And then you run out of money. So in today's video, I want to go over exactly what happened, what could have caused this past week, where we might be going next, and what I'm gonna do about this. So I'm really excited. Let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the therapy session. Once again, that's the theme this year. So before we get into the video, please remember I'm not a financial advisor, and even though I make personal finance videos on YouTube, and even though I have some subscribers, it doesn't make me right. Just please remember that my opinion is one of many, and it's not necessarily correct. Also remember that I made most of my money with social media and YouTube and not investing. I'm just sharing with you my personal finance journey, and the rest is up to you, because I don't want to be recommending you to buy Netflix only to have it crash 40%. That actually happened. Now let me quickly summarize the economy in terms of how we got here in the first place through the same lens of Titanic, because as funny as it is, we're not that far into the analogy yet. Here's where we are. So Titanic is the economy, right? And then we have Mr. Ismay, who, let's just say, are the politicians, and they are urging Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, the real captain of the ship, to, hey, if you want to reach America early, then you have to crank up those engines, old boy, and pump up those rookie numbers. So he does. He cranks those engines and he starts the money printer and it goes. Federal fund rates drop to zero, free money for everyone, $14 trillion of stimulus money gets injected into the economy, and we have the stock market go to an all-time high, compensation all-time high, demand all-time high, and the party is going on. The ship is having a grand old time. Except we get a little too drunk and we lose some common sense because we forget that we can't keep going up forever. And that's when, all of a sudden, the ship picks up so much steam that by the time we notice the inflation iceberg ahead, we just can't pivot because the momentum from inflation is just too great, and since our rotors are too small, or the supply chains are just so clogged, that we can't balance out demand. And that's when Jerome Powell's like, I got an idea. Let's reverse. And that's where we are now. So now let's talk about where we're going. But first I want to thank today's sponsor, Current. It's a new way to money entirely on your phone with a mobile app and debit card that allows you to spend and save money better so you can do you faster. And since doing me means doing card tricks all day, that's basically what I'm doing nowadays. I'm just kidding. That's not how you're supposed to use it. Card tricks not included. One of my favorite parts about this app is that you can create what are called savings pods. Now, a savings pod allows you to set money aside for a vacation, for groceries, for an emergency fund. For as little as 1 penny, you can get started earning 4% APY. You can watch your savings grow daily. You can move that money whenever you want, and interest is calculated every single day. And if you're a free user, you can create 1 free pod. And if you're a premium user, you can create up to 3 pods, each of which will earn 4% APY on up to $2,000. Current is FDIC insured, which means that your deposits will be insured on up to $250,000 through their partner bank. But the best part is that Current is giving 10 random people $100 to get started earning that sweet 4% APY. Go download the app, use code Andrei, and go start saving money with Current. Thank you, Current, for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now let's get back to it. So we are in this part of the movie right now. We're still cranking that money printer, but we're trying to slow down, except the momentum of inflation is still pushing us forward. Now, some of the people that are watching this movie right now are like, well, I've seen this movie before. I know exactly how it's gonna end. It's about to be super painful, but spoiler alert, Rose survives and everything's fine, and I'm not selling. The other people are watching this movie and are like, well, maybe this movie has a different ending. And that could be true, but right now the truth is we are still cranking the money printer to the tune of $20 billion a month in bonds and another $10 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities, which is how the Federal Reserve balance sheet has now ballooned to over $8.8 trillion, which is about twice as much as where it was before the pandemic started. Now, the people that are on the outside of the ship that are paying attention to what's going on and to the broad economy, they're starting to see the crew panic just a bit, which is sort of like the last people you want to see panicking. You ever notice how pilots are always calm, even though it feels like the plane's about to fall apart? We're experiencing light turbulence. Sit tight, everyone. You'll be all right. So seeing the crew panic makes other people panic. But fundamentally speaking, there was nothing new we learned last week that we didn't know about for a long time. We knew inflation was high at 7%. We knew that Papa Powell would increase the rates at least twice this year. So why then did the market react so hard? My guess is because of something called market sentiment, which is a fancy word for we just got emotional. But there was kind of a good reason for it, because Netflix, for example, fell 23% last week. And the reason is because they forecast 2.5 million new subscribers to be added to their platform. Now, analysts predicted 5.9 million in the first quarter. That's less than half of what the professionals expected. And the reason that's such a big deal is because analysts like to use the projections of big companies, especially tech companies, to try to predict what could happen to the market in the near future. Now, if they're noticing that Netflix is predicting such a slow growth, what else does it tell us about growth in the near future? And there's kind of some anecdotal evidence to back that up with something called capital velocity. When capital velocity is high, it means people are exchanging money, money's moving around, we're in a bustling, booming economy, everything is good. But when capital velocity is low, it means people don't want to spend their money. Check this out. This is economic data from Fred St. Louis Fed. So looking back as far as the 1960s, you can see capital velocity is around 1.7, and it stays there for a few decades before reaching its peak of 2.1 in 1997. Then we get the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, and then the Rona. And here's where we are now, 1.1. This means investors are starting to get worried and they don't know how this movie ends. And you can see this play out on Google search trends too, because home loan searches are at a 5-year low. Auto loan searches are at a 5-year low. My YouTube ad revenue is down 28% from where it should be, as well as a bunch of other creator friends of mine. That tells us that companies are starting to spend a lot less money on advertising. And what does that tell us? That tells us that, at best, companies are saving money to prepare for a potentially hard year, and at worst, it tells us they're preparing for something bad. Either way, when we don't know how the movie ends, we go and take a bathroom break. You sell stocks, you sell crypto, and you get last week. That's my interpretation, but I could be wrong. Now let's talk about where we could be potentially going. Think about it like this. If the Federal Reserve really wanted to fix inflation, wouldn't they have to raise the rates by at least as much as inflation, if not more? Because in the 1970s, when inflation hit 11%, Paul Volcker, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman at the time, had to raise the rates to 20% just to cancel it out. We don't have 11% inflation, we have 7%, and we're raising rates by 1 to 2%. So what's that going to do to inflation, and why do we even bother? The reason is because Jerome Powell believes that we're in a temporary demand pull style inflation thanks to supply chain problems, which he believes will work themselves out through normal supply and demand mechanics over time. He also probably believes that if we raise the rates too high too fast, that it's like the equivalent of telling everyone on Titanic, put on your life jackets. You never want to tell people to put on their life jackets until it's the last moment possible, but also because we would potentially default default on our national debt, and we wouldn't be able to borrow money at a reasonable rate, which means growth would slow down, companies would freeze hiring, the stock market would crash by 50% or more, they would start downsizing, which would lead to unemployment, which would lead to a recession. So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place until these supply chain problems figure themselves out. And this leads us to this scary week, because this week we're having company earnings, big company earnings. And the reason this is scary is because if earnings come out great, then it tells Jerome Powell, hey, wait a minute, employment is back to normal, people are making money in the stock market, this gives me more confidence to raise rates potentially earlier. And remember, the market does not like rate increases. But if the earnings come out bad, then it tells everyone, I knew it, the recession's coming, I'm gonna sell everything. It's a lose-lose scenario, but the general expectation is that tech stocks won't do as well, and instead, it's the value stocks and the small cap companies that will have a comeback. So if you're watching this video on Monday this week, pay attention to those earnings. So now let's talk about what everyone wants to talk about, the market crash. Now, my question when making this video was, have we ever been here before? Have we ever been in a time when the Fed wanted to increase the rates on us, and what happened to the stock market? And it turns out we have been here before a couple of times, and there's some decent data to show us what happened. Between 1989 to 2021, there were 6 periods of time when the Fed cut the interest rates, or rate cut cycles. Now, during that time, the S&P 500, the stock market, averaged 21.2% returns. That's not bad. But now let's compare it to the opposite, when the Fed increased the interest rates. Between 1994 to 2019, we have had 5 periods of time where the Fed increased the rates on us. And during those years, the S&P 500 averaged 62.9% returns, or almost 3 times as good. Now, the reason that I say this data is decent and it's not 100% reliable is because these numbers are skewed by the average. And we're not comparing apples to apples because it depends on how high valuations are presently. And today, tech stock valuations, for example, are extremely high, some of the highest valuations we've ever seen. And they are much more susceptible to inflation and rate increases. And the other reason this is not 100% reliable is because if we look at daily averages, then the numbers are skewed in favor of rate cut cycles, or when interest rates go down. But again, the point is that everyone expects a market crash. But since I've started investing in 2014, which was not that long ago, every year there has been a stock market crash prediction. But the thing about market crash predictions is that when everyone expects one to happen, that's usually not when one happens. Here's the most important thing I learned. The stock market is forward-looking. So anything you think you know, or anything you think will happen to the market in the future, just assume that it's already priced in today. If anything, right now is a great opportunity for Wall Street to buy the dip, the market rallies, either retail investors get left behind or they sell, and that's when everyone is happy, something unexpected potentially happens, like a global political conflict between 2 nations, or the failure of a major lender, or when people stop paying back their student loans because after May 1st, interest-free forbearance ends, and that's when the dominoes really start to fall. So I predict the market will probably continue to fall at least until the end of March, when we're expected to have that first rate increase. It'll continue to fall at least as long as we don't understand how often and how much those rates will increase. But once we do, then it'll stabilize. But personally, I'm still invested in the market. I'm not doing anything differently because sometimes doing nothing is literally the best thing you can do. So I am still buying VTI, the entire US stock market. I'm still buying a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Ethereum, and could we crash? Yes, we can, and if we dip a lot, then I'm still gonna buy the exact same amount, because a reminder about dips, this is the dip, then this is the actual dip, then this is the dip of the actual dip, and then this is the dip of the dippity dip dip, and then you run out of money. Have a wonderful rest of your day, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Love you, thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you back here on Monday and Friday, sometimes a Wednesday. I'll see you soon, bye-bye.